So welcome back to the Dynasty Football Maniacs. So today we're going to cover the top 15 IDP players for the NFL. So IDP is the defensive side that covers the defensive line, linebackers, and defensive backs in fantasy football. So what me and Austin did is we ranked out our top 15, and we didn't split up the three positions. But we do have our top 15 overall. So the way Austin did it, he just named out his top 15. Me, I named off my top 5 for each position and then ranked it into the 15. So our rankings are going to look a little different. But it's definitely going to make it interesting.
But I think that's the journey of it, though.
Yes, that's the journey. So in my perspective, when I'm ranking it out, I'm looking at, these are the 15 names I'm looking at when I go my favorite 15 out of all three positions that I would like to draft. And this is for like a startup. If you're already in a fantasy league, you already have players on your team. These would be players you'd want to probably go after in a trade or try to pick up or put on your team. But I am sure if you're in a league of 12 guys and you're playing IDP, even if you're only playing one position each, all 15 of these guys on both lists are not going to be available.
Right.
So I doubt very much you're going to see any of these on the waiver wire, but just if they are, it'd be I would try to reach out and grab one.
Right.
All right, so let's start. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. First things first, we're going to start with our bottom 5. Just kind of show all them together and put them side by side. And like I said, I ranked mine with 3. So when I'm ranking, they're my top 5 from that position. So in my bottom 5, I have 3 defensive linemen and 2 defensive backs. And a lot of reasons for that is most of your linebackers score a lot more. And if it was like an overall ranking, like not positional, I would probably have more linebackers in my top 15, kind of like Austin has his laid out. So I'm going to run through these guys. So number 15, you have Myles Garrett for Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I have Aiden Hutchinson for Detroit.
Oh.
Number 14, you have Alex Singleton, Denver. I have DeForest Buckner of Indianapolis.
Okay.
Your number 13 is Aiden Hutchinson.
Mm-hmm.
My number 13 is Josh Metellus from Minnesota.
Okay.
Your number 12 is Drew Greenlaw of San Francisco. Mine is Derwin James Jr. of the Los Angeles Chargers. Top defensive back right there.
Mm.
And then your number 11 is Quincy Williams, New York Jets guy. And mine is Josh Allen for Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay.
So for their position ranks in my ranking, because I have individual rankings that I will drop on our Twitter page. So you guys can see that link below. It's at TDFFMS. It's the name of the show, the Dynasty Football Maniacs. So when you get there, you'll see our name. I'll have all positions for the NFL, my top 20 for each position on there, so you can see my top 20 for individual position. So you'll see my top 5 where they're ranked. Like Aiden Hutchinson is my 5th DL. Buckner is my 4th DL. And my 3rd DL is Josh Allen. Defensive linemen that play the center part don't score as much in fantasy football, but they are relevant. So they score enough where you're going to play certain ones, and these guys are the ones, especially Aiden Hutchinson. He plays both. I mean, he's an edge rusher. I mean, he's
right.
all over the place.
Yeah.
And then on your side, you got some good ones down there too. Miles Garrett, good DL line guy. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
this year he did not do as well as he did previous years. But when I rank my NFL, this is the difference between me and Austin. And Austin can contest to this. I am a statistic guy. And I know each year differs, each year changes, but I still drive all my decision making on statistics. So I look at how many tackles they had, how many assists, how many sacks, how many points did they score that year, and that's how I rank them. I rank them per touch, and then I do an average. Like if they played multiple years, I look at how many times they were in the top or where they were ranked last year and the year before that. What did they do them years? And then that average, what is that? And then that kind of helps me rank them the way I rank them. It's a lot of times it aligns with most of what you see out there on some of these sites, but then sometimes I'll throw you for a loop. I'll have someone on there and you'll be like, well, Ralph, why?
Mm.
So,
I
but
can't wait.
that's where we're at for the bottom five. I don't have any arguments of who you have in your bottom five for top 15. I mean,
I mean, I think you can go with either or on most of them.
yeah. But I do see Aiden Hutchinson climbing up in time. I believe another good year of what he done this year and next year. I expect him to stay in my top five, and
Yeah.
if not, progress higher. Um, there's some good DL guys that I got listed up above him that we're fixing to mention, and you also have them in your rankings. Um, until them guys start stepping off, and neither one of them is in their years of playing have shown any kind of stepping off. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's some people in the D line that are D line guys. Uh,
Right.
and, and usually, like when I'm looking at when I'm trying to draft my defensive guys, I don't know, Austin might have a different take and he can tell me what his take is, but I'll be honest. I know in one startup as a joke, I took a defensive player in the fourth round. And it's not really a joke. I mean, I did grab a good defensive player. I didn't waste a pick. I mean, maybe it was a little too soon, but I did it just because I knew someone liked the Cowboys and I wanted to watch him say, oh man, he did it to me again. So it's like, you ever watch that Britney Spears? Oops, we did it again. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
me. That's the
But
only reason I did that.
but the funny thing is
I,
who wound up with them at
I
the end.
at the end, I didn't want the player on my team and I was willing to trade him away. So, but I got first round picks for it and I got what I wanted out of it.
Well, you got what you want. I got what I want.
But
So it all worked out.
I got a half a season of pointing a finger at him. And then I was like, I'm not winning. I'll give it back to him. So
Yeah, it all works itself out.
it all works itself out. If you're
Hmm.
doing something for the wrong reasons, it's gonna backfire on you.
So here's the question, real quick:
All right.
is the fourth round like too early? Because you said it might be, but if you really look at the landscape of it, how early is drafting a defensive player overall?
That really depends on what okay, so like when you set up a standard league on most of the sides, they do automatically put 6 for sacks, interceptions, and touchdowns. If you leave it at that setting, you should be grabbing some linebackers. In the end of the fourth round should be that time, that fifth round. So if you do like an average draft with offensive and defensive players going, you'll find out that early mid fourth round, someone's itching to grab a player. Now, I've never seen a defensive back or DL go at that round, and maybe I've not been in enough draft shifts to see that. But most of them are your linebackers, and it's going to be your Raekwon Smith, your Bouchade, T.J. Watt. Them kind of players are going to just come right off that. Even Nick Bosa. I mean, they're going to come right off around that time. So during the fourth and the fifth, if you're drafting a startup and you're doing both offensive and defense, after that point you need to figure out a rhythm. Because if you want a decent defense and a good offense, you need to build your offense in them first three picks. Then come that fourth round, you need to make a decision. Do I go offense, then defense, or do I go defense sixth round? Sixth round, you're still going to be safe. I've seen a lot of teams start about the sixth and seventh round and still turn out with a pretty decent defense. I mean, there is a lot of linebackers in shared positions. Like you could pull a lot of linebackers in that have DL markings, play them in a DL spot, and do just as good as the top five DL guys score. So, I mean, but if you pick up that Max Crosby, or you get that Wilkinson, you get that Aiden Hutchinson, and they're only labeled as DLs, they're not labeled as linebackers. You got that one part of that DL position solidified. And then you could pick up enough linebackers to fill in the gaps between that second position, two under. And a lot of times you'll see that on your flex positions, you're playing linebackers too. But don't forget about the defensive backs because depending on what they are, they're a safety or a high scorer. Um, they're getting interceptions, they're doing all kinds of stuff, they're getting tackles, they're putting up the points. So them defensive backs are up high. Some cornerbacks are high, depending on who they are. Um, and the problem with the cornerback is once the NFL discovers you're good, they'll try not to throw to your end. So that also hurts your numbers. So I'll give you a good example. Petrie from Houston, first 2 years, oh my God, put up the points. Third year, struggled. I mean, he wasn't playing like he did before. Derwin James, same thing. He's a good guy. I mean, so it's a give or take. What's
I know.
another? Go ahead.
I did notice that. I know they morph them together on the Dynasty League, but I do know that safeties seem to score more than the like cornerbacks do because I mean obviously safeties have the ability to free roam and they can actually climb up to midfield and tackle somebody who's coming across while the corner usually, most corners, their main purpose is okay, I gotta man this guy and then bat the ball down. Which,
Yeah.
depending on your league scoring, you could score points too for pass deflections, but safeties just seem to score more than actual corners just because well, like they could free roam and just go around tackling and trying to intercept the ball at the same time.
So just to give you an example, you're like what you're saying. Like let's talk about Derwin James for a minute.
Hmm.
Compare him to T.J. Watts of Pittsburgh. Tackles last year, Derwin had 86 straight up tackles. That's a point each. T.J. Watt only had 48, but why he scored more was T.J. Watt had 19 sacks. I mean, one
Hmm.
interception, one pass, eight pass deflections, four forced fumbles, uh, defensive touchdown. He played all 17 games, so he was one of the higher scorers out there. Actually, he's second overall next to the other linebacker, which I'll mention later. But
Yeah.
it's pretty impressive.
Oh
You
yeah.
don't you don't need to be yawning on me.
It's, I've been at work this morning and been there early, so I apologize.
Oh, I understand. Hey guys, let me tell you right now, this is not our full time job. If you think we are, we're going broke. we're doing this as a part time thing. So yes, some of us have to work during the day.
I apologize, but we're gonna truck through it.
Yeah, you about got me going. No, I'm good. But so with that being said, that's how I have it aligned versus the way I ranked it and then the way you ranked it. And I really do like your top 15, Austin. When I look at it, that's pretty good because I'm going to go to the next five. And your next
Okay.
five is number 10 is Fred Warner of San Francisco. And then my number 10 is Cameron Bynum of Minnesota, defensive back. Then you have Max Crosby, which we know is a DL.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have Jesse Bates, the third from Atlanta. Now, he followed last year as a defensive back in scoring. He was the second highest defensive back scorer in fantasy last year. So that was pretty
He had
good.
a really good year last year.
Yes,
It was
it is
really
previous.
impressive.
Yeah, in his previous years, he's done good too. I mean, he always finishes within the top 10. I think one year he was like 11, but most of them are top 10 finishes. And so, I mean, he's a steady player. Uh,
Last year was his most career high, and season interceptions was 6.
yeah.
That was crazy.
And your number 9, well, I already said your number 9. Well, your number 8 is Devin Lloyd. Whoo, about messed that one up. Sorry. And mine
It's
is
all good.
Daniel Hunter from Houston, defensive lineman. Uh,
Okay.
he's oh no, wait, I'm sorry, I skipped a player. My number 8 is Max Crosby. I can't even
Yeah.
read.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So yeah, let me get this lined up so I'm reading the right guys here. So Daniel Hunter from Houston, DL, is my number 7. My number
Mm.
8 is Max Crosby, which you had Max Crosby at 9, so we're not too far. But you're number 7. Great young guy, really doing it good. Nick Bolton. So he definitely deserves to be up there. Top line player. And then your number 6 is Bobby Okria, right? Is that how you say his name? Okera. And it, and then
You're pretty close.
yeah, I have him ranked number 3 of mine,
Okay.
but my number 6 is Terrell Bernard from Buffalo, linebacker.
Oh, that's a
Oh,
good one.
yeah. So as I said, keep in mind when I'm naming mine, I have all top 5 positions. Like there's 1 through 5 for DL, 1 through 5 for DBs, and 1 through 5 for LBs for my top 20 rankings. And I brought them over and then I ranked them for 15. So I only had one linebacker in that group. And that's where I said linebackers are going to control the top 10 always, just due to the fact of what they do and what they produce. And you're going to see that of the names we name upwards, which some of them you've already added to your list. But I also like what you have in your top 5, like Zaire Franklin. He was right there in my list. I think he was 8, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you see my list, if you go to X page, former Twitter, um, down below is the link at TDFFMS. And when you get there, you'll see it, the Dynasty Football Maniacs. And you'll see our rankings of all these positions in the NFL. There'll also be, we're going to be covering rookies. So they'll also have that on that page tomorrow too. So be a lot of information to go and take in.
Mm-hmm.
So number 5, I have Bobby Wagner of Washington as my number 5. So your number 5 is Franklin. Mine is Bobby. They're both equivalent players. I had Bobby ranked 4th overall linebacker. Um, he did really well. I mean, between him, Bobby O'Carey, uh, 2 kind of set themselves apart from them, but that, I mean, they all scored within the same. There was like no 100-point difference on any of the defensive players. They were just, and this is all based on PPR, so this is just standard scoring. In our league, we get a little bit of bonuses for certain things. So you take that like Bobby Wagner scored 259.6 in our league. Just a rough math. It'll be close to 300 to 400 points, but they had to do it for all the defensive players, so it won't just be that one defensive player. So you can still see the results just doing a PPR. I just like to lay it out PPR because that's what most people do. I mean, some people don't take the time to sit there and add a little bit more to it. They just stick with the standard, and that's fine. You can do whatever you want. That's everybody's, like when you're setting up a league, you do what you want.
Right. That's crazy. Bobby Wagner had 183 tackles last year.
Yeah, no.
He's just a tackling machine. Literally his whole career, he has never been under 100 in tackles.
Well, that's
And
tackles and assists together. He's over 100, but if you break them
that's
up,
that's but that's still wild though.
yeah, it is. It's wild. You look at it, and he
Because
had
he
three. He had 3.5 sacks last year, and pass deflection. He had 3. He didn't have no interceptions, but he did have a, a fumble return with no yards gained. And he played all 17 games. He was over on roster of 70.8%. So that means he
that
was rostered. That's pretty good. It's really pretty good.
like even without the assist, that is still crazy.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
And to be 33 years old,
I know, and that's the thing I love about defensive players. I mean, it seems like the older they get, the mature they get, the better they get.
I know it.
I mean, some of the better defensive guys are all in their 30s. It's like when they come out, they'll have explosive youth time, and they'll do really well, and they'll be noticed. But as they develop and they age, it's like a fine wine. They just tearing that line up. I mean, I'm like,
Yeah,
I get more impressed with some of the older guys than I do some of the younger guys. And it's more they learn where the mistakes were. I don't know. It's just a different defense to me is different than offense. When I watch football and I start understanding more about the defense, I realize defense is its own thing and the offense is its thing. And these guys have a talent that a lot of people don't even realize they do. I mean, it's not easy to do what these guys are doing. I mean, they're out there, they're balling. I mean, they're just balling just as hard as the offense. So a lot of them deserves a big contracts. And
right.
and I get impressed by some of the moves they do. And my favorite thing to watch is when I see a double team or a triple team. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Big man got the line. I mean, I've seen some shots this year alone with Raekwon Smith where they had 3 guys lined up on him, and he's still pushing. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! How do you do that? I mean,
Oh man, when you're that big, you can move a lot of things.
well, it's not just size; it's also skill and talent to understand what they're doing every time they thrust forwards and their hand movements and all that counts. Because if they mess up, they can get called for holding or all kinds of stupid stuff. Now they got rid of the hip tackle, and I mean, which I mean, I get some of that, but some of it I think they're getting a little bit. I mean, what are we going to do? We got to decide how many points we're going to get for flags now. I mean, I'm just, I'm not,
I
I'm not
think,
trying to, I'm not trying to condone anybody getting hurt. Don't, I don't want to say that because I'm not in their shoes, but I
right.
enjoy watching football. Not for the violence. I didn't realize it was violent. Well, I guess it is violent, but if you watch my daughter's recordings of me, it's like, don't ever show that to the world. I get a little crazy in the living room, but I just, I don't, I think sometimes the NFL overreacts. And I'm not saying I'm going to give up on them and go watch XFL because they're tackling. I mean that's still developing itself, and I don't know. I mean, I still enjoy watching the NFL and tracking the NFL. To me, is a lot better. So
I think, I think, since they banned this rule, they're gonna adjust. And then, like they did with the kicking thing, they're gonna be like, well, since we can't do this, we're gonna go do this.
yes, something else is going to come of it.
Yep.
All I can see is someone's legs getting folded backwards.
Oh
You
God.
can't hip toss them. You're
That's
gonna get a
my
big enough just to roll them right there. I mean, what else do you got to do as a defensive player? I mean, he's gonna push them right over. I mean,
That sounds like you're running into the kicker, but you don't run into them hard enough. But the kicker's got to try to fake it, and make it look like you run into them real hard. Start flailing around.
Yeah,
Oh, buddy, that's
I'm
funny.
telling you what. I want to say more, but I'm gonna keep this show clean right now. I ain't gonna let it go.
All right,
I
Ralph.
I
Let's just
almost slipped it out and said what I really felt.
let's.
One day it's gonna happen, and everybody's gonna go, "He said it."
No, he didn't.
Oh my God, my kids can't listen to this show no more. Like you're really you sitting down listening with your kids. I might not want to do that. Right now, we've been behaving and we've been doing pretty good, but I can't. I can try to condone. I can try to control myself to the best of my ability, but something's going to happen stupid enough for me to just bluntly say what it is. And when it happens, it happens. You're just going to have to live with it. I mean,
I think it
but
happens with most people.
yeah, most of the time I can get it out before the show, so maybe that's hey, that might actually help us out on the show. I don't know. Maybe maybe I should just drop it one day. Be like, eh.
like a
All right.
big, like a big bombshell.
You're like, did he say that? Yeah, he did. All right. So let's
Hmm.
get back to our rankings. Oh, I didn't mean to get off on the hip toss tackle. Oh my God.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah, yeah. So number 4, you have Ernest Jones for the Los Angeles Rams. He had a pretty good banged up season. Uh, Linebacker,
Mm. Mm.
and I have Bobby Okay, linebacker from New York Giants. He was my number 3rd linebacker. Uh, my number 3 is Antonio Winfield Jr., Tampa Bay, defensive
Okay.
back. Now, reason why I got him up there with the linebackers is statistically, in his position, defensive back, he outscored everybody by 50 to 60 points. So my number 1 is like 50, 60 points difference than the number 2 defensive back. So like your number 2 defensive back that I have on my list scored maybe not 50, 30, about 30 points different. He scored 238, and the next guy below him scored 209.
Mm.
So there's a big difference. Number 1 is set apart in that group. So he had a very good season. I looked at his past. He's always pretty steady. He always produces. He averages about 15.3 points a game, which is what you want. Um, had 76 tackles, 46 assists, 6 sacks. Did a little bit more edge rushing this year to me. Getting 6 sacks. I know he's a defensive back safety guy, but he's running up more than normal. Pass deflections, wow, 12.
Mm.
2 interceptions. No, 3 interceptions. I had stats mixed up here. Sorry. And in forced fumbles, he had 6. Which, if you watch a lot of his games, he's a puncher. Now he ain't punching the guy in the gut like the first time I seen it. He's punching the ball. I'm sure of it. But sometimes I watch it. He's like, I'm like, damn man, what are you doing? You punching the guy in the head or what? I mean,
All
you
right.
just getting it. So, but hey, you got the forced fumbles. That's what counts. 4 fumble returns. Played all 17 games. I mean, that's what you want in a defensive back. And most all the defensive backs I mentioned in his ranking averages over 10 points a game in a PPR league. So in our dynasty league, they probably average about 18, 20 a piece, which is be equivalent to theirs. Just the bonuses is the difference.
Mm.
And you got a good one. I like the one you have at number 3, TJ Edwards, Chicago linebacker.
That dude is good.
Yes, he is a good linebacker. So, like out of your list, you have only 3 players that are not linebackers out of the top 15, which is normal. But I still think in a normal list, and this is just me, and it's your list, and I'm not criticizing it. I'm good with it. Like I said, I really like your list. Your list will look more like my linebacker list. But that's because I made it. I did not tell Austin I was going to do that, so that's bad on me. I didn't do it. I did it like in the train of thought and thinking, oh, that'd be cool if I take these five, and these five, and then rank it out. And then I was like, oh, I probably should have told Austin I did that. So he's like, because technically, in all honesty, if I was ranking it out, like just ranking it out as best players, my list would probably look exactly like this. The only difference is I would have probably had Winfield in here, probably around 14 or 13. And I would have probably only had maybe three. Well, no, I would have had three DLs in there like he has. I mean, I could see me putting about two or three D. I know Aiden Hutchinson would have made it. Miles Garrett probably wouldn't have made it, and Devin Lloyd wouldn't have made it. They weren't in my top five, but
See,
I
it's
know
just
I don't know if Aiden would have made it because he's my top five. So I think if I'd have done a list, because there's so many linebackers that are so much better than what I have on this list, I think the only one that would come close to making it, because after, like, when I look at six down on my list, that's like the top 15 of linebackers in scoring. Like, the linebackers are all scoring, that top 15 are all over 250 points.
mm,
So it'd be kind of, like I said, it'd be that one defensive back that stood out and had a real special year. And the only reason I put him at third, Antonio Winfield, is due to the fact that his previous seasons were just as good. So me sitting down doing my little brainy thought, which trust me, if you go by my brain, you're in trouble already. So I'm just I I get some crazy thoughts, and you're like, where did that come from? And I'm like, hey, it's me thinking. Sometimes it's dangerous, but no, honestly, I mean, your list really looks good. So I'll leave it at that. I'm getting a little bit off track here. So I like who you have at number three. I really do like TJ Edwards, and I believe he's got a lot coming more. I believe we're going to see more about TJ Edwards. He's a really good player.
oh yeah.
All right, so we are close to the top two, you and me. And then we're like way different. But it's okay because that's part of fantasy. Everybody has their own opinion.
Hmm.
The only thing matters is that you enjoy doing it and you can win. And me and Austin both experienced winning, even though I gave him a win last year. I just didn't want to tell him until now.
Oh, boo-hoo.
oh,
That's
but
what they all say.
all right. So Foye from Jacksonville, Oakland. I always call him Foye. So I mean,
Yeah.
Fourchade is his name. He's number two for you. He's number one for me. So he is the top scorer on defensive players this year.
Oh.
My number
See,
two is TJ Watt, and he's the second highest scorer. And
I'm
the only person that come close to TJ Watt is the guy that's number three, that's a defensive back. The other linebackers was at least 5 points off from TJ Watt. So 5 points ain't a whole lot, but like skills and then doing the years they played and all that. I'm gonna tell you right now, last year my rankings did not have TJ Watt that high. I had him lower. He was injured last year, and it kept him out of playing a lot. And I do consider that. See, I do put the injuries in there. And a lot of people say, well, you don't have Raekwon Smith in here. Well, Raekwon Smith didn't make my top five this year in linebackers. He came in seventh or eighth. I'd have to look at the list, but total overall performance now, that's where he came in. But people have developed to play against Raekwon Smith. So if you, like I said, when you watch his tapes, he's got two other people trying to stop him, and sometimes three. How is the guy supposed to produce? Now you look at the rest of that line for Baltimore. Oh my God! Wish I had them all on my defense team. I mean, they were all blowing it up, and all of them got good locations. Went to Patrick McQueen. All these guys moved on to other places, but a lot of people don't give credit to it that most of your teams was focused on Ruckwan. They were watching him.
Yeah, but
Just like
Roquan's
when they're
he
going when you're
he's
going against Dallas, it's the same thing. You watch Micah Parson, you put your guys on him. It prevents him from doing anything. How are you supposed to do anything if you got three guys blocking you?
well, Roquan still had over he still had 158 tackles combined,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
then still had 327 total fantasy points throughout the year. That is still producing.
yeah, yeah. In our league, it was 300 and something, and in in a regular PPR league, well, it's the same thing. If you did the math, these guys would be the ones that I named are the highest scorers in our leagues too. Other than if they did a punt returner, there was a couple defensive guys that did punt returner that got that little bonus that we have in our league that does set them apart. But I don't really count them because yeah, we have a little bonus for our punt returners because it helps out the league, gives you that little extra person to put on your shelf if you need a wide receiver or something like that. But sometimes they're defensive players. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Keishan was the guy in our league this year, played for Green Bay. He's a defensive back, I believe, but he was also doing punt returns. But he scored the highest out of the defense. But he's only been doing punt return for 2 years. If you look prior to that, he didn't do anything on defensive side of the ball. So when I'm ranking, I take that out of the equation for my league because I'm looking at defensive performance. And another thing is I take advantage of that punt returner thing that we have in our league. It's a what 0.3 for every 10 yards or something like that.
Yeah,
So it helps out when they get a punt return and they're returning yards. It's more than what an average wide receiver would receive. But the catch 22 to that is some players only do that like 1 year, and you never know who's going to do it. And once they mess the ball up or just fumble it, they're not the punt returner no more. So, I mean, there's certain ones out there that get the job all the time, and then some doesn't. And I had one that had the job like 2 years in a row, and then on the third year, they never let him return one punt return. And his points, like the most he scored all season was like 7 points, and I ended up dropping him on the waiver wire. I mean, for some reason, he was not the punt return guy no more for Baltimore. Someone else was, and that
hmm,
happens. So, I mean, we have the top 4 in our top two. I have number one. You have number two. I have TJ Watt number two, and you have Requan Smith as number one, which I can't argue that. I mean, if you go to any average draft position, Raekwon Smith is number one. So I'm doing mine on statistics. They're doing it on statistics and where most players would prefer to roster him than the other guy. A little different, but like I said, I like your top 15. I'm good with it. Mine's a little different. And then I just remembered, like, just on the ADP, let's see here. So just talk about the ADP. Just in tier one, they have Ernest Jones, TJ Edwards, Foye, and Raekwon Smith as your tier one. This is everybody. Defensive ends, linebackers, everybody. Uh so your tier two is Bobby Okery, Nick Bolton, Devin Lloyd, Max Crosby, Fred Warner is your number twos. And then your number three tiers is Quincy Williams, Drew Greenlaw, Aiden Hutchinson, Alex Singleton, Miles Garrett, Nick Boza, Quay Walker, Patrick Queen. We mentioned him. The list is long for three. Devin White and Alshear for Houston. And then four, you got Micah Parson heading that group up and so on. I'm surprised they have Micah Parson down in tier four. Usually he's up higher, but this last year he was set back a lot, but I think he'll recuperate next year.
They gotta get some help on the other side of that defensive line.
Yeah, and Antonio Winfield, all credit, defensive back, you play safety. So that helps. When you play safety, you're going to score higher. Safeties are better than your cornerbacks because your cornerbacks can get shut down. But there's some good cornerbacks out there that can really do some damage if you got them on your fantasy team, like Nate Hobbs, Kenny Moore the second. Um, Last year, that rookie at Seattle, Witherspoon, did very well. C.J. Gardner Johnson, no, he's a safety, so that's not a cornerback. That ain't a good example. Let me give you another good example. Okay, the guy I was talking about was Keyshawn Nixon. So he's ranked 88 overall defensive player.
I'll give
But
you I'll give you another one. Derek Stingley when he came back from his injuries.
yes, Sneed, another good one.
Hmm.
But now they're dropped down a little bit more because cornerbacks are not given, like, they don't tend to be that high on the scoring side. But the guy I was talking about earlier on Green Bay, it was punt returner in defense. In our league, he was ranked number one on defense because the fact that he did punt return and he played cornerback. So just knocked the crap out of Mike. I was gonna fight with this thing. I mean, it's gonna get angry up in this house. You said I was gonna get all with it. You gotta calm down. Keyshawn Nixon made me mad. You know, someone wanted a first rounder for him. I wouldn't do it.
Really?
Yeah, well, I don't blame him because he scored so high. He's the number one defensive back. And if you look it up in Sleeper right now, under our league settings, he's number one.
So this brings me to a point where somebody asked me this question. Hey, somebody who watches the show,
Mm-hmm.
but he's asked me a question, and it was actually retaining to this is a, retaining to IDP because so I wound up trading my 113 for Patrick Queen, and because I wanted to add more depth to my linebacker. Well, I get a message from him, and he's like, hey man, he's like, you giving up a first rounder for an IDP player? He was like, I need you to explain to me why. And I was like, well, you got to look at it like this. I was like, we're not just dealing with offense anymore since we're an IDP. We're dealing with defense too, and there's plenty of defensive players who are worth first rounders. You got
So, yeah, so with that being said, I agree with you 100% because I'm looking at Patrick McQueen's fantasy points just at PPR last year was 220. Your average wide receiver is 220.
yeah,
So some of them are top. So for a defensive guy to score that, that's good. And to me, he is worth a late first rounder, mid second rounder, between that range. So if I had a 113 and that's the last pick of the round, and what he has done this previous year and the year before has been consistent. He's a top 20 player. To me, it's like giving up a first round when you're that back that far. So you're not. I mean, I don't even know if I said that right. What I'm trying to say is, to me, it's a second rounder. When you're giving away a 113 or 112, a 111, they're not as valued as 1 through 105. But still, there's some players in defensive that have to earn that respect too, because there's some defensive players that score more than some of your top offensive players score. Like Boucher, who we just mentioned for Jaguars. I mean, he's close to 300 points. You look across the board, only your top wide receivers are doing that, which are all first rounders. Only your top tight ends are doing that, which are first rounders. The only ones that scoring higher than that are quarterbacks, and they're just in their own little group, and are running backs. except for Christian McCaffrey, because you have to score at least 400 points to pass that guy. So, and that's only if he's not injured. If he's injured, then you can keep up with him. So that just depends. So if he's not injured, forget about it. Forget about it. I mean, I think we've all learned our lesson now. We see this. If this guy ain't injured, he's going to get his 400 points. He's going to be the number one running back. And he's proven it over time and time and time again.
Yep.
But if he's injured, someone else has a shot. So, and that's not a nice thing to say about anybody. I don't want anybody to get injured. I don't condone that.
Nope.
And that's even Pollard. It's going to be okay, Pollard. Dallas didn't love you.
Well, that was just out of nowhere.
You know how much resentment I have there.
Well,
And there's rumors out there that someone could actually come back.
You're crazy.
No, I'm not crazy. Oh, Zeke might be back on that field. He
Uh,
might be a backup, but he's there. That's what matters. Dallas realized they let the wrong child go.
oh God.
I had to get it out there.
No, I don't. No, you're so full of it.
Yeah, I started drinking a little early. Oh, I only drink coffee, guys. Don't think it's alcohol. So my kids cracked me up today. Let me tell you this, Austin. My daughter, she doesn't like root beer.
Mm-hmm.
I love root beer. Well, we were out of everything. No Kool-Aid. Oh God, Daddy was horrible today. Didn't leave no Kool-Aid, nothing else to drink, just root beer. So she drank some of it. I get home, and then she can imagine she's 8 years old. She come to me, she says, I'm a little dizzy. I was like, what you dizzy for? She said, I drink all that root beer. I said, root beer don't make you dizzy. She said, Dad, it's beer. I was like, no, that doesn't affect you like other stuff. But she had me cracking up. She was hilarious.
That's funny.
I was like, but then guess what? I don't have no more root beer. So,
Oh,
yeah, yep. She drank all my root beer. That's what I get for not leaving nothing for them to drink. She said
yep,
I could at
that's
least make
exactly right.
Kool-Aid.
All right.
Oh, I lost my earpiece. Man, I'm unorganized today.
No, you good.
About spit my coffee up, dropped my earpiece. I haven't even shaved today. Whew. What a long day we had. All right.
Right.
So that covers our top 15 for the IDP. And like I said, you guys can get my top 20. Austin did put this top 20 together, so he's like, I don't want to claim anything that guy puts out. But I'll also add his top 15. It'll also be posted on the page for you guys to grab if you want to look at. It's good to grab them because what I used to do, and I still do, when I go draft, I used to try to get top players list, have them in front of me so I understand. I mean, you already have a game plan of what you're going to draft, but you want to get a certain tier and you want to add them to your team. So I do a lot of my own tiering and my own rankings before a draft. So I have my own list that I use. And I've had some success with it. And then sometimes not so much success. And then sometimes it's a lot of stupid mistakes I made after the point. I mean, I made a decision last year. I gave away CJ Stroud and I had Sam Howell. And at the time, that was before Sam Howell messed up. And I felt sorry for this other team. He drafted this startup, and his quarterbacks were just like junk. And I know I played with the guy in other leagues, and I was like, I'll help you out. I'll help you out. I'll throw him a trade. I didn't know other people were throwing him trades either. I probably wouldn't have traded him. But my smart thinking, bad thinking, is I weighed the two, and I was like, right now CJ Stroud ain't really rhythmatic and ain't really getting it right yet. And here's Sam Howell's throwing it down the field. So I'm gonna keep Sam Howell and I'll trade him away. Man, did I mess up on that. But I finally got him back. I got him in one league, but I don't have him in the other league now because of that mistake. So a lesson learned: when you pick the guy at your rookie draft, stick with your guy. because not everybody's going to come out the gate swinging. Some take a slow start, but once you don't know what they're going to do at the end of the season, so you got to be careful.
Right.
But to get back to your question, yes, I think Patrick Queen was worth a 113. No hesitation. Especially if it's a need on your team. If you needed another linebacker that good, that quality, top 20 guy, say you have a top five, which I know you do, you're putting that to 18 to a top five. I mean, that pretty much solidifies that position. I mean, your linebacker's solid, and I'm pretty sure any ranking system will have you up there in a higher rank just because of that. I mean,
Right.
so
It's just it's just some people,
they don't understand it.
some people don't quite understand it, but you know, after a little while of dealing with it, then the more you get into it, the more you just start realizing, okay, so this guy is actually worth a late first. This guy, he's actually worth a second and a third. Then, eventually, the more you play the IDP, you're going to be in the same rhythm like you are with your offense.
Yeah, so I seen wins come last year, and I've seen it the year before too. But I mean, you could have a decent offense, and as long as your offense is clicking, if you have that extraordinary defense, you're going to win games. There was games that people thought they weren't going to win, but they had that defense that was solid.
Mm-hmm.
And players like Zaire Franklin, he's only 10 in points scored, right? But you have him on your team, you're guaranteed 15 points every time he plays, if not more. That's only an average of 15. He had some games where he just balled out. And then his lowest score was this, but his average is 17 games. Well, he played 16. 16 games, he averaged 15.3. Now, the one thing I also experienced with defense versus offense. Now, I've seen it a couple times this year with offense because I had two wide receivers that did it to me. Just got a big fat zero, and they actually played in the lineup. They just didn't score. And they were actually in the rankings. And I'm like, Marquise Brown, thank you. Not one time did you give me a zero. You gave me two zeros, but I still loved you. Uh, it wasn't his fault. It's just how that game portrayed. The guy never threw the ball to him. I think he had like a couple targets. He didn't get the one target, and then it just
Mm-hmm.
was not that day. Uh, Defense players, you'll see this, even your good ones. Even TJ Watt, uh, Mack, Quincy Williams, TJ Edwards, any of these guys, yes, they score big. And when they score, they score. But they're going to have that one game when they're in that defensive mode that they're really not getting no points because they're not tackling. They're there on that front. Don't get frustrated and pull them out because that's the biggest mistake you'll make. Because most of these guys I'm naming, on an average, will have one game with a zero. And I've seen it 100 times over. So if you're not familiar with IDP, you need to pay attention to scoring because all these defensive guys, I've seen them at least get 1-0 during their games. And then there's some that are just come out every day, score that 10 points, and tackle someone in every game. But a lot of times they're not, it's the position they're put in. They're playing left side, right side, middle. It just depends on where they're at. And then, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios that could cause them not to score any points or just to have a blowout day. I mean, and then some people say they see defensive players have, like you always see one that just blows out every week. Yeah, you do. Just like you have a week, every week you have a running back that blows out. I mean, same with a wide receiver. You get one good wide receiver. The question is who's going to be the number one wide receiver next year? I wonder. I mean, yes, Justin Jefferson is the
Mm.
man, but the quarterback is going to be different. It really depends on who's the quarterback up there. But I honestly, and this is my honest thought. Someone said this to me the other day, and you know what I turned around and told them? We
Mm.
can only dream that he's not going to be number one. Because if you watched him in college, you watched him in his professional, he's the type of receiver, and he's one of the few that can sit there and get a ball thrown to him, no matter where it's coming from. He has the reach, the jump, the ability to draw it in and on the edge. A lot of wide receivers cannot adjust like that and get the catches he catches. There's a lot of catches, even on the gen stats, it shows that a lot of his catches, like, it's not supposed to happen. So I honestly, even though we can sit here and talk about a different quarterback, I still think it's going to be Justin Jefferson at the end of the day. I think the bottom four would be interesting. I mean,
I think
really,
I think you can make an argument that Jamar Chase could be the number one next year.
you could make that argument. If Joe Burrow comes back slinging, you can make that argument. But I've yet to see Joe Burrow come out day one slinging. He's a slow go, always. And you can see it, it impacts Jamal Chase. I had both of them players on my team. I seen the impact. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. So I look at it like this. I've had it happen to me on redraft. I've had it happen to me in Dynasty. And yes, Jamar Chase, hands down, is the number 2 wide receiver right now. And yes, I do agree with you. If the right thing happens, he could pass Justin Jefferson. And then it's a whole different conversation. But at this time and right now, I think Justin Jefferson is going to prove to everybody it doesn't matter who quarterbacks for him. They're lucky that he's there for them.
I just don't have much faith right now. Literally, the quarterback room right now is literally Sam Darnold. I don't, unless they do something in the draft. I don't have much faith in
All
that.
right. So when you said that, that's how I felt when I first heard the Seahawks going with Geno Smith. I was like, oh, Geno Smith. And man, did he come back and show that all them years in the NFL paid off.
So
So
he had one really good year, and then he's going back to mediocrity.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it was a surprise when he first came back, but then after that, it's like, okay, well, it's kind of like Geno Smith that we knew before now.
yeah. Well, let's go ahead and we've done pretty much covered all of our IDP guys for the NFL side for 2024. If I was you guys, go ahead and go to the link down there. Go to our it's a new Twitter page, or I'm sorry, it's not Twitter no more. It's X. It's so hard to say that. I mean, I have my own little Twitter page, but when we started this whole, and we're doing this for fun. It was a bunch of us guys at work. We love to talk about football. We all play fantasy football. We play fantasy football with people outside of work. It's not just the work. And we both have big networks. We both play big leagues, multiple players. In some of our leagues, covers multiple states. So it's like all of us can't get into one room. Like back in the old days, we get together and write down on the notebook paper of who we're drafting, who we're picking. I mean, that's how long I've been playing fantasy. I mean, I remember my AOL email. So that don't even exist anymore. But I remember doing that back then, and now it's so diverse, so large versus what it used to be, and so it's pretty fun. We got 2 good leagues. They're spread out, like I said, in multiple states. We do sometimes have Zoom meetings, and some of them we know personally and been to their state, friends and stuff. But it's good. We sit here, we have a good time. You always have a bad apple here or there. You can't help that in anything you do, even in fantasy football. You just got to learn how to deal with it and move on, and not let it bother everybody else. Don't let the drama get you. Enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
You only live once in life, and life could be short for somebody, and then sometimes it could be long. It's just I'm starting to learn I've always learned that you got to take advantage of the moment you have because you never know when that moment's gone. So,
Yep.
but no, you guys can go to the Twitter page, get our rankings. I'm gonna have them all uploaded by Saturday. Hit follow because we're gonna drop our when our shows are dropping every Wednesday. The goal is to have them released every Wednesday before the end of the day. A lot of times we've been getting them out at 7 in the morning, and every Friday morning or before the end of the day. So every week we've been having 2 episodes. We know we're going to be changing the time a little bit up when football season starts. One more thing I wanted to get out there. I know earlier in our first couple episodes, me and Austin were way ahead of the game, and we were wanting to do some live shows right away. And personal things and work things got involved, so we're not going to be able to do our live reaction, but we'll still have a reaction show to the draft because no matter where I'm at in the country, I'm still going back to where I'm at to watch the draft that night. So, and I'll
Yep.
probably be calling Austin on the phone. Oh my God, did you see what they did? It's like I told him the other day. I kicked in the dash of my car, and I didn't really kick in the dash of the car. I was just exaggerating, but told him it was all over this mock draft. This is why I don't listen to mock draft. You know, how dare them? And I'm gonna tell you what they did to me. I'm driving down the road. It was good. Everybody knows Chicago Bears gonna pick Caleb Williams. Who cares? That's what I'm like. Okay, Arizona's getting Marvin Harrison. All right. They get back to the 9th pick for the Bears. And this is where I lost it. I just came unglued. And I think the guy's been hit in the head with a rock at this point. He goes, Chicago Bears are drafting Brock Bowers. About that time, I could just took my car and just sling it. I mean, I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, where did this guy get this idea at? What happened to him? And I'm not saying that they won't, but that was the first time I ever heard that. And I was like, don't do that to me. Because fantasy related, this is not good. So that's why I'm so upset. It's not that like I care. I love Brock Bowers. I would love him on my team. But guess who I have as my tight end? My number one tight end, Ole. So don't draft Brock Bowers. That's all I gotta say.
Oh.
Ryan Poles, if you even pay attention to our show, which I'm sure you don't draft him. Or else I'm coming to Chicago.
Actually, do it. That way I can see him squirm all year.
I'm headed to Chicago right now. My wife's always wanted to go there. Take her to the Jolly Bee. So why are you up here? I'm here to see Ryan Poles. I will show him what I feel about him drafting Brock Bowers.
Oh
That's like
man.
me telling everybody at work I tried to get an application in Alabama as the head coach. I sent in a letter. They ignored it.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing that.
Yeah, well, so did all the professional teams like the Raiders and all them. They rejected my letter. I don't understand it. I thought it was a pretty good resume.
Oh yeah.
I've been in fantasy football for this many years. Come on.
I can run your team,
I can run your team better than the guys you had in there.
right?
But all right. If you guys like the content, please hit subscribe and the like button. Go to our Twitter account at TDFFMS, and it'll say the fantasy, the Dynasty Football Maniacs. Oh my God, I about messed that up. But there we go. All right.